Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're studying a very inspired Swami Vivekananda. This is chapter 9 of his collected talks published under the title Jnana Yoga. And it just should be underlined that he's not speaking just to the people who were in the room with him on that day when he said these words. He's speaking to us. He's speaking to us right now, this minute. Right now, this minute. And here's what he said. First, find out that you are not the slave of nature, never were and never will be. That this nature, infinite as you may think it, is only finite, a drop in the ocean, and your soul is the ocean. You are beyond the stars, the sun, and the moon. They are like mere bubbles compared with your infinite being. Know that, and you will control both good and evil. So I'm going to read that again because, as I said, he's speaking directly to us about who we truly are. First, find out that you are not the slave of nature, never were and never will be. That this nature, infinite as you may think it is only finite, a drop in the ocean, and your soul is the ocean. You are beyond the stars, the sun, and the moon. They are like mere bubbles compared with your infinite being. Know that, and you will control both good and evil. Then alone the whole vision will change, and you will stand up and say, how beautiful is good, and how wonderful is evil. So before we go ahead, any comments or questions about this inspired and very inspiring few sentences that the Swami said? Anything at all?
I like that you have reminded us that the Swami is speaking to us directly and not as if like we don't have access to the Swami.
Thank you, Aaron. Yes, indeed. It is meant for us. These things were published so that we could all hear these ringing words of inspiration of the Swamis. Anything else?
It's very inspiring, Brother Shankara. Good and evil have always been part of our life throughout, in generations and in the past. And every time something evil or evil person, some person does something evil, we react so much and get our blood pressures high. It's been there. If we look at the history of our lives, it's always been there. And that's one thing he is making us realize. Swami is making us realize. First, master yourself, then you will be able to manifest better stuff in your life.
Thank you, Haima. Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone about this, what the Swami said, or anything else having to do with this?
Brother Shankara, I do
Yes,
have a question. Um, I joined a little bit late, but when he says that know that first, and then alone you will be a true optimist and not before. For then you will be able to control everything. What does he mean by you will be able to control everything?
the realized soul shares with the divine being omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. The only thing that the realized soul cannot do is create the universe or destroy the universe. By their very being, they help sustain and protect the universe. That's what the Swami means. Any follow-on question?
No, Brother Shankara, that's clear.
And if you want to know about this in some detail, read the end of chapter 3 in Raja Yoga and chapter 4 of Raja Yoga. The Swami explains in great detail what happens when you become Kaivalya, independent of any limitation. Which he said, he just told us, you always were and always will be. It's only our covering of ignorance that keeps us from realizing this. And when we determine that we wish to dispel our ignorance and do the things that are necessary to dispel our ignorance, which the Swami will again go over for us a bit later in this talk, then we come to this. Swami Swahananda, when he was head of the Ramakrishna Mission Center in Delhi, he was just 42 years old and was already, he had been given by Vivekananda a great deal. And he began to notice that whatever he said, whatever he wished for, even whatever he thought about in more than a casual thought, would come to pass. So he prayed to the Divine Mother. He was devoted to the Divine Mother. He prayed to the Divine Mother to take this from him. And that happened. Though later in his life, quite late in his life, it manifested again. when he was in his 90s. Anything else before we hear more of what the Swami has to say?
Brother Shankara,
Yes,
it is.
yes,
When I hear this passage, it makes me think that he's using different language to kind of explain what our true self is and kind of that non-dual kind of way. Am I understanding that correctly?
yes, absolutely. Duality is a fiction. It is a fiction that we have created for ourselves in order to do exactly what we're doing tonight. To be many and share the experience of this manyness. But it is not a reality. It is a relative reality, as Adi Shankaracharya puts it, a superimposition created by our ignorance on the truth. So yes, you're understanding it correctly.
Yeah, it was that passage when he says, "And your soul is the ocean," that made me kind of.
Precisely. You hit it. You caught the pitch precisely.
Excellent. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for reminding us.
I don't understand at all about the goodness and the evilness.
There's the relative world of good and evil, and then there's absolute good and evil. There is no such thing as duality without good and evil, dark and light. And when he says wonderful, we now in the modern world, modern language, think of wonderful as a good thing. What he meant by it, and what it meant in those days, was something full of wonder, that you marveled at, that it made your eyes roll back and you were back on your heels.
It stunned you.
Yes, exactly. So, but the fact of the matter is that everything arises and passes away in the relative world. And when we get stuck on some idea of an evil that must be eradicated, it isn't that we shouldn't do anything. It isn't that we shouldn't have compassion. We should do it and then move on. Because until we are realized, we are not in sufficient control. So we do what we can and move on. If we get stuck, if we get distracted, then we're just delayed. Thank you, Beverly. It's good to clarify that. Anything else from anyone?
Yes, Brother Shankar, I have a question.
Yes,
Does evil arise from free will or does evil arise from ignorance?
there is no such thing as free will. It's an appearance only. We think we have free will as long as we think of ourselves as a separate being. Evil arises because it is in the nature of manifest reality as created by the three gunas for evil to arise. Krishna explains this to Arjuna very, very thoroughly in the chapter, I think it's chapter 8 in the Gita, called the Three Gunas. Arjuna asks, why do people do evil seemingly against their will? And Krishna explains, it is the work of the Rajoguna.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
It isn't as if we shouldn't think that we are not responsible for our actions. But we have to think, who am I that is responsible for these actions? It's not the little mind and 5 organs of action and 5 organs of perception. Thank you, Anshu. So the Swami goes on, that is what the Vedanta teaches. It does not propose any slipshod remedy by covering wounds with gold leaf, and the more the wound festers, putting on more gold leaf. This life is a hard fact. Work your way through it boldly, though it may be adamantine, no matter, the soul is stronger. Work your way through it boldly, though it may be adamantine, that is very hard and tough to crack. No matter, the soul is stronger. It lays no responsibility on little gods, for you are the makers of your own fortunes, not in the limited sense, in the sense of your true being, the Atman. It lays no responsibility on little gods, for you are the makers of your own fortunes. You make yourselves suffer, you make yourselves good and evil, and it is you who put your hands before your eyes and say it is dark. You make yourselves suffer, you make good and evil, and it is you who put your hands before your eyes and say it is dark. Take your hands away and see the light. You are effulgent. You are perfect already from the very beginning. We now understand the verse. He goes from death to death, who sees the many here. See that one and be free. Take your hands away and see the light. You are effulgent. You are perfect already from the very beginning. We now understand the verse. He goes from death to death, who sees the many here. See that one and be free. How are we to see it? Now this is the instructions. How are we to see it? The Swami goes from stating the case of our true nature, how to see it. How are we to see it? This mind, so deluded, so weak, so enslaved, even this mind can be strong and may catch a glimpse of that knowledge, that oneness, which saves us from dying again and again. How are we to see this? How are we to see the truth? This mind so deluded, so weak, so easily led, even this mind can be strong and may catch a glimpse of that knowledge, that oneness, which saves us from dying again and again. As rain falling upon a mountain flows in various streams down the sides of the mountain, so are the energies which you see here are from that one unit. As rain falling upon a mountain flows in various streams down the sides of the mountain, so all the energies which you see here are from that one unit. It has become manifold, falling upon Maya. Do not run after the manifold, go towards the one. He is in all that moves. He is in all that is pure. He fills the universe. He is in the sacrifice. He is in the guest. He is the guest in the house. He is in man, in water, in animals, in truth. He is the great one. As fire coming into this world is manifesting itself in various forms, even so, that one soul of the universe is manifesting himself in all these various forms. As air coming into this universe manifests itself in various forms, even so the one soul of all souls, of all beings, is manifesting himself in all forms. This is true for you when you have understood this unity, and not before. Then is all optimism, because he is seen everywhere. The question is that if all this be true, that pure one, the self, the infinite, has entered all this, how is it that he suffers? How is it that he becomes miserable, impure? He does not, says the Upanishad. As the sun is the cause of the eyesight of every being, yet is not made defective by the defect in any eye, even so the self of all is not affected by the miseries of the body or by any misery that is around you. It may, I may have some disease and see everything yellow, but the sun is not affected by it. He is the one, the creator of all, the ruler of all, the internal soul of every being. He who makes this oneness manifold. This sages who realize him as the soul of their souls, unto them belongs eternal peace, unto none else, unto none else. He who is in this world of evanescence finds him who never changes. He who in this universe of death finds that one life. He who in this manifold finds that oneness. And all those who realize him as the soul of their souls, to them belongs eternal peace, unto none else, unto none else. Now the Swami has said some truly stunning things. Any reaction, any comment, any question? What does this give rise to in you?
Well, Brother Shankara, I love how and just a few pages ago, he said, your soul is the ocean, and then describes that, and then connects this kind of back around and says the same thing, but just in a different way.
Yes. He's trying to get it through our thick heads, isn't he, Dennis? Why are our heads thick? Is it because we're bad? Is it because there's something wrong with us? No. It's because for many lifetimes, the story goes, we've gone from death to death, believing that we are separate. We have gone from death to rebirth, believing that we are a separate being, responsible for our actions in an ultimate sense, as morality would teach us. All this talk of karma and all that business. Krishna says, release all those thoughts, and karma, you no longer involved with karma at all. He said, karma is mine. Stop taking it away from me. He says that in chapter 4 of the Gita so clearly. Just offer it back to me. So that's why we're thick-headed, because we're so practiced at it. We've rehearsed it for a long time. All of us, every last one of us. So now, what are we doing here on a Wednesday night? We're here to hear that which will awaken within us the determination that this is the truth, not what we have believed for so long. And so then we continue our adventure of finding our way home, finding our way back to that oneness and out of all of the habits and distractions that we've grown so fond of.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swam.
I was a little bit intrigued by the phrase in that sentence, may catch a glimpse of that knowledge. Um, I was thinking that the usage of the word may here is not the ambivalent may, like may or may not, but more like a permission. Yes, you may or can. And the question I had also was, so even a glimpse is sufficient to save us from the cycle?
What does the glimpse do for us? Every one of us, I dare say we wouldn't be here if we haven't had a glimpse, or perhaps even more than one glimpse, of something that is so different. That is the awakening within us. That opens our eyes, if only for a moment. And we go, whoa, what was that? What was that? And it prompts us to go looking. What was that? And so we slowly and slowly find our way from I am to I am and the truth is, to the truth is and I am, to the truth is. It's not that we're wrong for thinking I am. Manifestly, Each of us, as we sit here this evening, is. What the Swami is telling us is that it's only the surface. It's only in a relative sense. Don't get stuck on it. When you glimpse the truth and you begin to focus on the truth, as the Swami has been saying it to us so eloquently, you go from just saying, I am, to I am, and there is truth. Truth, capital T, truth. I am, and truth is. After a time, we get enough clarity to where we see the truth is, and yet I still have the sense that I am. But I am is now believed to be and experienced as a part of that truth. Ultimately, as the Swami says, even that disappears, and there's only the truth. Your infinitude. Thank you, Swayam.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. That was very clear. So the glimpse is like the starting point.
It's what it is what begins to wake us up. Anything else?
I think that's really interesting because I've only had very few like what you would call transcendental meditation experiences in my life, but those experiences are so profound and influential on how I've continuing to live my life.
Thank you, Aaron. They're pretty convincing, aren't they? That's what the Swami tells us. You have to go in the laboratory. If you're going to learn chemistry, you can't learn it by standing outside the laboratory and saying chemistry, chemistry, chemistry. You can't learn it even by reading the book. You have to go in and, as the Swami says, burn your fingers with the acid. Set the Bunsen burner over the flame. Put in this fluid and that fluid. Mix them together, heat them to a certain temperature, put in a reagent, and suddenly the beaker that was full of liquid is full of crystals. Then you know something of chemistry. You've had a revelation. Well, that's the glimpse that the Swami's talking about. And it requires us to do something after we have that first glimpse or two. It requires us to do something. Requires not in a sense of dogmatically, but if we're going to expand that and deepen it and broaden it and reach the inner recesses of our being, something is required.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Sumesh.
Yes. So, I mean, intellectually, I understand, but when the rubber hits the road, like I give you an example that I'm in an IT job and I want to have my own business. I tried a few times, it doesn't work. Every time I think of that, I don't have a very very pleasuring experience. It's like very disappointing experience. So that's the thought that comes to my mind. At that time, I say certain things about myself, certain things about the world. I create that in my mind. At that time, it's not like I'm the Brahman, and it's not that. How do you change at that moment? How do you
You don't change a bad moment, Somesh.
Okay.
You do not change the bad moment.
Mhm.
The bad moment is the bad moment.
Mhm.
It comes and it goes. If we hang on to it, if we continue to remember it, if
Yeah.
we continue to rehearse it, then it remains. If we let it go, as you said, the rubber meets the road, well, use that metaphor of the road. Go on down the road. That was then, this is now.
Yes.
So that's the way
Yes.
that we transcend those bad moments. But the bad moments, we don't change them.
Mhm.
We learn what we can from them and then let them go. What did you learn from this experience and that experience that resulted in your not succeeding? There must have been some potent lessons in that.
Mhm.
All right, now the decision is, will I try again? What is every one of the great teachers, whether they be spiritual or practical? Thomas Edison said, it's 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. Yoda, the great teacher portrayed in the Star Wars, the Star Wars movies, says the difference between the master and the apprentice is that the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even tried. Failure is no problem. Failure is just what happened. So, okay, what do I learn? Do I gather together the internal, my grit? Do I gather together the wherewithal in the external world and try again? Or do I surrender to the idea of failure? It's our decision, but we don't change the bad moment.
Yeah, you're right. See, at that bad moment that happened, but that also goes and change. Like, okay, if I failed once, many times, I don't even try the same thing again. Okay,
But you wouldn't
and
try
that
the same thing again, would you? Only a fool tries the same thing and expects a different result.
Mhm.
So you would find a different way.
Yeah.
You would find a different way to achieve the same outcome.
Okay.
And this is exactly, read the book Divine Grace by Swami Vivekananda.
Mhm.
This is exactly what he says to do. Become as great as you can possibly be in the place that you are.
Mhm.
Just expand yourself to the limit of your capabilities, to the limit of your capabilities. And then when you have done that, and you've done all you can do, then you find, he says, Krishna taps you on the shoulder and says, aha, you see, it was me all along. And furthermore, I have something more I'd like to show you. So I recommend, Somesh, that you read the book. It's available here in this little bookstore. You can also buy copies online. Divine Grace, Swami Ranganathananda. It's only 83 pages long. It is the transcription of a talk that he gave in Perth, Australia, to a Shivananda ashrama group in 1978. And the thing that will astound you is he had no books in front of him, he had no notes, and yet he delivered this incredible talk, just opening his mouth and speaking. And what he says is, it can be done by you. So be
Yeah,
up and doing.
I understand that. What happens with this experience is that I tell myself I'm I'm not capable to do that, or I make like I'm not meant for this thing, and that's what keeps coming up. It's not that I learned a lesson, like a practical lesson, and I move ahead. It's I create a whole world around it, that this is what my nature is, like that, or
That's what I'm saying to you, Somesh. As long as you rehearse it,
Mhm.
as long as you take that failure as somehow significant and say that it means something,
Correct.
it's just what happened.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Logically, I do agree to that, but it just, at that moment, it doesn't feel like this. It feels
Well, of
like the
course
truth.
it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. That's why these teachings are here that we're studying so much, so that we get encouraged to go beyond our limitations.
Mhm. Yeah.
And as long as we rehearse our limitations, we remain limited.
Yeah.
As long as we say, I can't, well, naturally, then you can't.
Yeah.
How can someone do when they say, I can't? Just listen to Yoda. The difference between the master and the apprentice is that the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even tried. Now, that is wisdom.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to fail. Each one of us fail again and again. Swami Vivekananda says, we fall 1,000 times, we rise 1,001 times. It doesn't mean that all of us, our hearts don't go out to you for having tried and not succeeded. We
Mhm.
all know what that feels like. So our hearts go out to you. We care for you and for what you experienced. But we also say, don't let it limit you. Don't let it stop you. Study how others have succeeded. Adapt those methods to your own use and go forward. Anything else from anyone? And by the way, Somesh, I'm not speaking from ignorance. For 47 years, I was a married man and a businessman. I had my own businesses, not one, but three.
Mhm. No, I believe you when you're saying.
So this is not smoke I'm blowing at you. This is experience. The first business I started, I sold it to my biggest client because I wasn't able to make it happen. Okay,
Mhm.
simple as that. I don't mean to rehearse my own experience. That's not the point. I'm just trying to tell you that this is not idealism.
Mhm.
This is not some thoughts from a book.
Yes. And that's what, that's the way to succeed. You read about every successful person and
Well, that's one way to succeed.
Yeah.
The best way to succeed is to study yourself, see what you have to offer, and then find a way to offer it.
Okay.
That's the best way to succeed. That's what I learned. Anything else from anyone?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
I was wondering that message of, falling 1,000 times and rising 1,001 is not just limited to the lesson learned in terms of a failure in a business or a job or career or whatever, but the aspect of accepting and growing in a spiritual way.
Oh, absolutely. But this is, we must remember, Swayam, what Swami Brahmananda said. Raja Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda, said to Swami Prabhavananda, who was saying that you couldn't see the world of spirit with these physical eyes. Swami Brahmananda said, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. There is no line of demarcation. There is in fact no such thing as the sacred and the profane, the material and the spiritual. So everything is to be seen as something that from which we can learn and that will lift us up. So it's good to keep our focus on that and not draw a line of demarcation where the wise ones say there is none.
Right. I guess I wasn't able to convey what's in my mind when I restricted myself to those words. I think what I was trying to get out is, instead of restricting to just I guess the thoughts about failure in a business, and then let, I'm just not able to express myself. It's broadening, bro, you know, without demarcating the material and the spiritual, but just using the thought process to grow, like.
Yes, to not be limited in any sense, in any context. You're absolutely right, Swayam. That, I think, is what you're trying to get at. Not to be limited in any way, in any context. Certainly not by the fact that we fell off the horse.
Thank you, Brother Shankara, for clarifying what I was trying to get
Well,
out.
that's what I heard. That's what I heard you trying to say.
Yeah. Actually, I have an example that what Swayamji was saying, that do I meet every human being with the same love and grace every time that, that I'm meeting like another Brahman, like that. I look at them, if they smile, then it's a different. But if if they're busy, then my experiences are different. Do I always meet everybody like, wow, like I'm meeting another form of Brahman, like that?
That's the ideal, all right.
Idea, yes, and I feel, and probably
Well,
less.
of course, we all do, Samesh.
Yeah. Yes.
We all do.
Yes. I think.
We all do. It's not like there's anything culpable about it.
Mhm.
It's just our ignorance expressing itself. And the less ignorant we become, the more we're able to be that which our wisdom tells us. And this is why the Swami Swahananda said, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. As we become more aware, we begin to behave differently.
Yes.
So
there
this,
doesn't seem to be any language that, I mean, like if you think about, becoming one with God, your mind still tells you that you're only a small part. So every human being is a small part of being God. But then that sounds like duality.
Well,
I mean,
that
that
is what.
sounds separate from God.
Well,
Or
you're absolutely right, Beverly, because, and you said the words right in the beginning, when we have these thoughts in the mind, limitation is automatic. Small part, this, all those, that language. These realizations do not come from the mind. They do not come from thinking about it. They come from experiencing it within. That's why the Swami used the word glimpse. We get a glimpse, not because the mind gave it to us, but because our inner being shared that with us. So then we follow ourselves into our inner being, and we find, that's where we find the treasure. But you're absolutely right that the mind will continue to see limitation, duality. Of course
yeah,
it is.
it's very hard to let go of your mind.
Say it again, dear.
I said it's incredibly hard to let go of your mind.
Oh, yes, it is. It is incredibly hard to let go of our mind. And as Swami Vivekananda says in other places, only a fool will let go of what works until they know there's something better. The mind has worked for us. It has been a coping mechanism. So,
It has been our all, oftentimes.
well, we think it has. We think it has. But actually, the heart is 8 times more powerful, just electromagnetically. The heart is 8 times as powerful as the mind. And so we think it's the mind, and oftentimes what we're receiving is from the heart. So let's listen a little bit to what the Swami says here at the end. We're coming to the end of the hour. Where to find him in the external world? Where to find him in the suns and moons and stars? There the sun cannot illumine, nor the moon, nor the stars. The flash of lightning cannot illumine the place. What to speak of this mortal fire? He shining, everything else shines. That's why our mind thinks, because he is. And it's what our heart reflects when we discover our heart, uncover. He shining, everything else shines. It is his light that they have borrowed, and he is all of these things, including the mind. It is his light that they have borrowed, and he is shining through them. Here is another beautiful simile. This is the Swami speaking. That was a quote from the Upanishads. Here is another beautiful simile. Those of you who have been in India and have seen how the banyan tree comes from one root and spreads itself far around will understand this. He is that banyan tree. He is the root of all and has branched out until he has become this universe, and however far he extends, every one of these trunks and branches is connected. And what did Christ say? I am the vine and ye are the branches. And he said, this is in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, he said he was rooted He is rooted in the one. I and my Father are one. But then he became the vine, and all else is the branches. Various heavens are spoken of in the Brahmana portions of the Vedas, but the philosophical various heavens are spoken of in the Brahmana portions of the Vedas, but the philosophical teaching of the Upanishads gives up the idea of going to heaven. Happiness is not in this heaven or in that heaven. It is in the soul. Places do not signify anything. Here is another passage which shows that the different states of realization. In the heaven of the forefathers, as a man sees things in a dream, so the real truth is seen. As in dreams we see things hazy and not so distinct, so we see the reality there, hazy and indistinct. There is another heaven called the Gandharva, in which it is still less clear. As a man sees his own reflection in the water, so is the reality seen there. The highest heaven of which the Hindus conceive is called the Brahmaloka, and in this the truth is seen much more clearly, like light and shade, but not yet quite distinctly. But as a man sees his own face in a mirror, perfect, distinct, and clear, so is the truth shining in the soul of man. The highest heaven, therefore, is in your own souls. The greatest temple of worship is the human soul, greater than all heavens, says the Vedanta. For in no heaven anywhere can we understand the reality as distinctly and clearly as in this life, in our own soul. Changing places does not help one much. I thought, while I was in India, that the cave would give me a clearer vision. I found it was not so. Then I thought the forest would do so. Then Varanasi. But the same difficulty existed everywhere because we make our own worlds. If I am evil, the whole world is evil to me. That is what the Upanishad says. And the same thing applies to all worlds. If I die and go to heaven, I should find the same, for until I am pure, it is no use going to caves or forests or to Varanasi or to heaven. And if I have polished my mirror, it does not matter where I live. I get the reality just as it is. And what does Chaitanya say in the opening of his prayer? Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. Now, of course, Chaitanya is teaching the devotional way of cleaning the heart, cleaning the mirror of the heart, the purification. So, any final thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have something that I've been waiting to get off my chest.
Okay, Anshu?
Just Really quickly. No, I'm just joking. Um, I you were talking about a glimpse of reality, and I was wondering how that. So I was a hippie in college, and I had this experience with LSD
Mhm.
only one time, but it was an experience, the most profound experience of my life, and it started my spiritual practice. Was that sattva, or was that something deeper, or do you know?
Whatever got you headed in this direction, Anshu, was an auspicious gesture of your own soul, which in that moment had somehow been freed up to remind you of where it would be auspicious for you to go. So you took the LSD once and you had this experience. It was a profound experience. Wonderful, wonderful, something full of wonder. It led you in this direction. Now we've gone from wonderful to grace. Now we've gone to true impetus toward spiritual practice. So whatever happened, look at the result.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thanks for bringing that up. Anything else from anyone?
I remember I was hearing how Ram Dass, his guru, had taken some LSD, which Ram Dass gave him, and his guru said that essentially that's interesting, but that's not it.
That's exactly what Neem Karoli Baba said. He took enough LSD. Ram Dass gave him a palm full of window panes. This is the story. Window panes are very powerful, very pure LSD. And Neem Karoli Baba put all that in his mouth. Ram Dass thought, I have killed my guru. Well, Neem Karoli Baba, as he often did in many circumstances, simply rolled himself up in his blanket, became quiet. 6 hours later, which should have been, he should have been essentially incoherent at that point in our normal way of thinking, certainly having taken that much LSD. And he simply said to Ram Dass, as you quoted, Aaron, that's interesting, but that's not it. And so Ram Dass stopped taking LSD, which he'd taken for years.
Thank you for that, Aaron.
Whatever, yes, thank you for that, Aaron. Whatever it is that happens in the material world, if it produces a result of our being more motivated towards spiritual effort, that has to be thought of as a very auspicious thing and an act of grace, not an act of grace from out there, an act of grace from within here. We want to wake up. We get weary of this. It isn't that it isn't remarkable. Being, creating, doing, sharing. This is all, the joy of this is why we're here. But after a time, it gets old. And so the Swami says, I tried going to the cave. I found, what did he find there? He found himself. He went to the forest. What did he find? He found himself. He went to Varanasi, found himself. Until he found something deeper. He was just going to find himself no matter where he was.
So we don't need to go to a temple. We need to go inside more than we need to go to a temple.
That's what he says. That's what Vivekananda says, and I certainly concur. It's not we'll only find what's in the temple when we've found it within ourselves. We may feel it when we go to a temple. We may feel that divine presence, but it won't transform us until we find it within ourselves. So yes, Aaron, you're right. Anything else? Anything to add? Anything to ask?
I think that's part of the reason, like, many people tried LSD and other drugs is like a dissatisfaction with what the world is giving us and what our own spiritual upbringing has given us. And
Amen.
there's,
Yes, Brahmadas, you're absolutely right.
but ultimately it fails to satisfy, which is what led us here.
I hope so, yes.
Oh, and George Harrison in one documentary talks about his disillusionment with LSD and how it just didn't give him his satisfaction. That then he went on to Eastern spirituality. I thought that's worth listening to.
Right, and even the Beatles song about LSD, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, ultimately tells you it's just a kind of magic that doesn't really leave you any much better off than you were.
Right. Huh. I never thought yeah, I've thought of that song. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it ultimately says, yeah, this doesn't give you much of anything.
Yeah. Well, it's entertaining. That's what Neem Karoli Baba was saying. Oh, that's interesting, but that's not it.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I had borrowed a book one time from you. I think you said it was sent to you by a friend of yours. I don't remember the title of the book, but it was a few short stories, and one of the stories was about this community's experiment with psychedelics, and it was a very interesting story. I wish I could remember more, but the end result is that it did not turn out well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I don't
but
remember the book either.
Yeah, no, so I mean, it never does. Like all those side effects and negative consequences far outweigh the positives that you get. So
right. The story was very creatively and imaginatively written. I wish I could remember the name of the book.
Well,
But
if you keep trying, you'll remember.
yeah, I borrowed it from you actually, from the center.
Can I make a comment? I love this discussion. This is interesting. About the worthlessness of psychedelic drugs. I think, like any other powerful substance, it depends on the context in which it's used. Because for one thing, LSD has been found in certain clinical settings to be very helpful in treating certain mental illnesses. But also, a lot of indigenous people use psychedelic substances such as peyote, but it's not taken for recreation. it's taken for very specific spiritual purposes and in a very specific context, and with guidance from a shaman or somebody who is very well familiar and versed with it. But young people just taking LSD or mushrooms or whatever for fun, yeah, they may have some very interesting experiences, but very few of them are going to actually have any spiritual experiences because it's out of context. Anyway, just I'd throw that in there.
Thank you, dear.
But
Sure.
I just have to kind of make the point that I was partying when I was taking that drug. So all of my friends, they just enjoyed the visuals and the sensory experience. But for me, it did something completely opposite. I didn't have any sensory experience. I had a profound inner experience. So there has to be something biological or something about me.
I think
Yeah,
it depends on the person. You were the right person, and it was actually useful for you.
Right.
well, as I say, look at the effects, look at the result. The causes are too well anyway. Just look at the result. The result was good. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Father and Mother. So good night, everyone. That's it till Saturday, when we'll study the book Realizing God. And then on Sunday, we'll have a little talk about who acts, who experiences. Good night.